Hello, I'm Jeremy, and today I'm going to take a look at an auction game designed by Alex Randolph by the name of Big Shot. This game was published by Ravensburger in a multilingual edition, I think back in 2001. It's out of print now, but you can find a used copy if you'd like on the secondhand market. And this is essentially an auction game where players are going to be playing real estate investors who are trying to gain control of various plots of land within a new developing city. What's unique about the game is the way that the auctions work, because it's an area control game where you generally are not going to have much control over where your cubes get placed. So winning auctions at critical times to guarantee that control of placement of either yours or your opponent's cubes becomes the important part of the game. So let me take a minute to show you how the game looks and plays, and then I'll come back and I'll let you know what I think about it. Here I've set up a game of Big Shot for 4 players, and the game plays from 2 to 4 players. If you're going to be playing with 2 players, each player is going to control 2 of these companies, keeping the money for each separate and tallying up the score between the 2 companies at the end. With 3 players, you will assign one of the colors to a dummy player who could win these sections but will not have anybody placing the cubes or bidding for that player. And then a 4-player game, each player is going to control one of these 4 companies. And these are real estate companies who are trying to gain control of these lots, which will be worth points at the end of the game. So for example, this one will be worth 10 points, 20 points, 9 points, and so on. And then in these 2 corners, there are these 2 special areas which are multipliers times 2. They have no inherent value, but they would each double the value of these 3 lots that are next to them. So this would be worth 18 if you own this and this, but if you just own this, it would be worth nothing. So at the end of the game, whoever has the most money plus combined value of all of these spaces less the value of their loans will be the winner. And so the way that the game works is actually quite simple. It's an auction game, and there's going to be 18 auctions in which you're going to be auctioning off these sets of cubes which correspond to the various player colors. So each turn, whoever's the first player is going to roll the die and move the pawn 2 spaces, or the number of spaces is equal to the number rolled. If you have already auctioned off a space, you'll simply skip that space. So here, now, this player, or the person to the left of this player, is going to initiate an auction for the right to place these 4 cubes, which you'll notice are in 3 of the 4 player colors. So let's say this player says 2, then this player, it's a simple auction, it just keeps going around. Once you pass, you're out, and you have to raise or pass until there's 1 person remaining. So let's say 2, 3, 4, pass, pass, 5, pass. So this player, for example, might win this auction for 5, and you'll start with 10 money. The game comes with this nice plastic money. They would pay their 5 to the bank, and then they would have the right to place these. So this red player won this auction. They don't have any red cubes in this set, so they might want to, dump these off into low value areas. So that would simply be the end of the turn. Now the next player, who I suppose would be the yellow player, would go, and they would roll the die, move the token 3 spaces, and now they would auction off this set. And it would just go like this similarly throughout the game until all 18 have been auctioned. Now, certain things will happen. So let's just say that somebody wins this auction and pays and places cubes here. And if ever you place cubes so that an area has exactly 7 cubes into it, it cannot hold more. So this would actually take 1 more cube there. Or, we might have some more over here. As soon as that happens, you're going to determine the owner. And the owner is simply the person who has the most cubes. So here, yellow has 3 to white and black's 2. So yellow would get the property. All that you would do would take one of yellow's cubes here and claim it as sold. So yellow would get these 9 points at the end of the game. There is a catch, however. So let's say that this was the situation and there was an additional white cube here. So now we would have a situation where white has 3 cubes, yellow has 3 cubes, and black has 1 cube. In that case, you disregard the cubes of any players who are tied for first, and the remaining player would get the ownership. So in this case, the yellow and the white cubes would go away, and the black player would become the owner of the space. So this could get really nasty, especially because most of the time you're not going to be placing your own cubes. You could even have a situation, for example, where you would have a three-way tie for first. So here, these three players would all cancel each other out, and with one cube, the black player would be the winner of this lot. So these auctions are all going to be going on simultaneously, with players free to place cubes anywhere across the entire board, and the auction's only going to trigger once a given area hits 7, and then you immediately evaluate it. So that's one wrinkle of the game. The second wrinkle is, again, you only start with 10 money, which isn't enough. So once per turn, you're able to take one of these loans. And the way that the loans work is quite interesting. The first time that you take a loan, you'll actually not get 10 money, but you'll get 9 money. Essentially, you're paying your interest costs up front. So that's well and good. And you can do this once per turn. Then the second time that you take a loan, let's say on a future turn, this player decides they need more money. Because they already have one loan, this one will be worth 8. The subsequent loan will be worth 7, and then 6. So that you can see there's really diminishing returns as you take these loans. Yet, you'll have to pay them all off at a value of 10 at the end of the game. So really managing your money becomes a crucial thing. So the game will just go for 18 rounds until you've auctioned off all of these sets of cubes. Then you'll look if there are any areas that still have have not reached the 7 cube threshold. Those will be rewarded to the person with the majority. So for example, here, yellow would win this one because they're the only one present. Here, these two players would be tied, so they would just cancel each other out and there would be no winner for this area. So that should actually be a sold token. Then, like I said, all you'll do to figure out your end score will be tally up the value of any areas that you have. Again, if you own the ×2 multiplier plus any adjacent areas, those will be doubled. You'll add that, any cash that you still have on your hand, minus the value of your loans. The player with the most points will win. Okay, so that is Big Shot, and this is a game that has only a few rules. It's actually quite simple, and you're going to be doing the same thing over and over during the course of the game, but it's one that has a lot of strategy in it, and it's one where the strategies are going to be developing and shifting a surprising amount over the course of the game. Because you're only going to get 10 money at the start of the game, you're almost definitely going to have to take loans out at some point. Yet, at least if you want to have any control over placing of the cubes, which is not strictly necessary. Yet, at the same time, you're going to have to manage your cube economy too. You only have 18 cubes placed onto the board. So if you lock down an area by placing 4 cubes within an area, because with 7 total cubes in an area, nobody could beat your 4 cubes. That is going to have some drawbacks as well. First of all, if you have 4 cubes sitting alone in an area, you could be sure that your opponents are going to just dump more of your cubes into that area, so you're overcommitting to that space even further. Second of all, if you have 4 cubes within an area, you know that you're really kind of being wasteful because because of that tiebreaker rule. It's possible to win an area with just 1 cube, so you want to do that as much as possible. So really just being opportunistic over the course of the game is really, the idea. It's not so much having total control, it's just seizing control when it matters. And that, because it's an auction game, it's going to be up to players to determine what those, pivot points are over the course of the game. Certainly the last few auctions of the game tend to be, very important as well, since you could often win control with just 1 or 2 cubes, swinging for the end game scoring, who controls which plot. But if you know that going in, and you should really tell players that if you're playing for the first time, it becomes important to have money on hand for those final auctions, which of course is easier said than done because you only get 10 money to start, and because taking loans over the course of the game becomes a game of diminishing returns. And that's also coupled with the fact that you can only take 1 loan per round. So if you're starting to get only 4 money or so per loan, you'll want to be taking those loans a few rounds in advance just to build a stockpile. Although, again, if you're getting to that point, you're going to have a lot of money to pay off, so you better win a lot of territories. So it's a game that is very player dependent. I think that's one that does a lot with a very small rule set, and it plays in about half an hour or so, which is a great amount of time for a game like this. It reminds me in a sense of the game For Sale. Perhaps it's just the theme of selling real estate, but this would be a really good alternative for people who really like that game, and I know that that's a popular game, just because it has a similar auction mechanism, but at the same time it plays out very differently. I think that it's a game that has potential to feel mean, but at the same time, you are always in the position to pay more money to take over, those cube placements. So it's really not so much that it feels mean. It's just that you've allowed somebody else to take, the right to place your cubes from under you. So overall, I think it's a terrific filler game. It's one of the more original auction games, even after 15 years or so, and it holds up beautifully. And I'd highly recommend that you try it if you could find a copy. So those are my thoughts on Big Shot, and thanks for watching.